Okay, so this is a completely original food app that I'm sure has nothing to do with any real world example called Just Dine, and it's developing a smartphone app to allow users to identify restaurants based on the type of food. Restaurants register with Just Dine. The app stores the name, city, type of food, and rating. So basically, right, we've got 4 items of data in there. Whether it turns out to be in array records or 4 parallel arrays, you've got name, city, type of food, and rating. The users enter a type of food and city. So 2 inputs, a bit like one of the other questions that we did earlier. National 5 level stuff. Display the number of matching restaurants, so number of. Now I know that this is something that a few of you have struggled with because we've talked about it. They are going to write the question avoiding the word count, right? So they're not going to say count the number of restaurants. So the number of, or how many. That's 2 ways of saying you're counting something. So it's going to be a count occurrence algorithm. Then display the name and the rating of the highest rated matching restaurant. So break that down for a minute. Display the name and the rating highest rated matching restaurant. Matching meaning the type of food and the city. See screenshot here of their beautifully designed app. Type of food, city, and then they've got a submit button and it shows this lovely sort of list box horrible output thing with 3 vegan restaurants in Aberdeen. The highest rated vegan restaurant in Aberdeen is Leaves in Green with a rating 4.51 out of 5. During the analysis, inputs, processes and outputs were identified, describe 2 processes. Sort of National 5 level stuff, to be honest. So 2 processes, well, it's going to find ones that match or search for them, right? Something like that. We're going to count the number of matching restaurants, or restaurants that match the 2 search terms, or however you word it, right? It's this idea, you're counting how many there are from the things that you've entered. One other process, well, see what it says, the highest rated. So find the highest rated restaurant in a city. Easy. Now on to the 4 marker. So the data is stored in 4 parallel arrays. Imagine that. We've got restaurant name, food type, city, and rating using a recognised design technique. So this is quite good because, you know, we got a little bit of slack here in terms of our syntax. Design an algorithm that would count the number of restaurants that match the food type and the city. So we're counting it now. What I said earlier, fairly big box, but we know that we're counting something, so we're going to start off setting count to 0. And I know, again, sometimes people say, oh, you're initialising variables. One of the standard algorithms will have some of them 1, and some of them are -1, and some of them are true and false, or whatever. Think about it. At the start, you haven't checked any of them yet, so the number of matching ones is going to be 0, and then we're only adding to it when we find ones that match. Relatively straightforward, so we're going to loop for each restaurant. We don't know how many there are. It doesn't say, you know, there's 100 restaurants or anything, but it's a design, so we don't need to be super exact. So I could say loop for each restaurant. Then inside my loop, I want to check if city, let's say city square bracket loop, or city square bracket I, or just some indication that I'm talking about each city, equals the user city or search city or something like that, and food type equals user food. Doesn't really matter what I've called that variable. Then add 1 to the counter. And of course, if you're doing that in Python, you're implementing it, you're probably going to do count plus equals 1. So 4 marks, right? I have set up my count and I've added 1 to the count. So together that's a mark. I have looped for each restaurant. Very easy mark. Basically National 5 traversing an array. And then if the first condition, I'll just change my pen a second. So if first condition and the second condition, mark for each. Now question moves on to trace table, and I've got a bit of code. So this function is going to find the highest rating for a restaurant. During testing it's found that it contains an error, and we've got a trace table. So if we look through the function, right, it's taking in a list of numbers, so there's nothing kind of wrong there. It's setting this thing upper, right, to the end of the list. We've got highest is initially the first thing in the list. Now if I look down here, that's 4.51. So I could just write on there that highest is now 4.51 to make life easy for myself. Then we've got for index from 1 to upper. So 1 is going to be referring to this thing out of the list in a minute. So for index from 1 to upper do, if highest, so that's if 4.51 is greater than 4.12, then set highest to list index. Now list index is 4.12. So this is not actually finding the highest. Essentially this algorithm is working backwards. Then the whole thing is going to repeat, and I'm going to have a look at my trace table, see what it is that I need to work out. So I've got A, B and C. This one isn't doing iterations of the loop. Instead we've got line numbers, and I'm just going to highlight where the line numbers are talking about the loop. So 28, 29, 30 and 31, right? That is all inside the loop. Then you see it goes back to 29 again because it's gone back to the top of the loop. So this is a new iteration of the loop. We know that because it's 2 in there. Then 34, so this stuff isn't happening and it's going down to 34. So that is effectively iterations of the loop that I've just covered in to make life a little bit easier for myself. So let's go through the program. I'm going to rub these out because I'm going to trace it one step at a time. So line 28, I'm setting highest to 4.51, so that is 4.51. For index from 1 to upper, so to the end of the array, if highest, so if 4.51 is greater than list index, which is that, 4.12. So it's me at line 30. Then line 31, looking for the value of high, so set highest to list index. So that A is 4.12. And then we're going back to line 29 again. So I'm going to rub these out. That means highest this time is 4.12 because I've gone back to line 29. So that's now 4.12. If that's greater than list index, so index is now 2, so list index is 4.99. So line 30 is looking for list index, well that is 4.99. And on the same line, right, highest greater than list index, is this true or false? So it's 4.12 greater than 4.99. No, it's not. So that means that I can fill in my answers below. So 4.12, 4.99, and false. It says describe how a breakpoint can be used to check the values in the trace table. It says 2 marks here. So first of all, what is a breakpoint? I know everybody gets breakpoints and watch points mixed up. So breakpoint could pause the program at each line. So you could stop at a particular line and check the values of the variables now. That's just first of all what a breakpoint is. Then if you're going to check the values of the trace table, check the values against the trace table. So you're using your breakpoint to pause at a particular line, inspect the values of the variables and check those values, are they the same as the ones in the trace table. Okay, and then lastly there's 2 other bits for this question and for section 1. So describe how the error in the code can be corrected. So we already saw what the error was. If we look at the code, it's saying is the high is greater than list index. It should be if the list index is greater than higher. Right, we should know the steps of our standard algorithms by now. So you could change the symbol, right? So you could just change if the highest is greater to if the highest is less than. Or you could, rewrite the function. So you'd say if, let's double check what the variable name was, list index. So if list index is greater than higher, or highest. Function find max is used to assign highest rating from the array rating to the variable my highest. Use a programming language your choice. Write code that assigns the rating to my highest. So we're going to call the function, right? So the idea is we've got this function called find max. If I'm going to call the function, I'm going to put that in the middle of the page, or the middle of the box. So the function is called find max. If I'm calling the function, then I need to pass in parameters. If I had looked at that function find max, see it's got 1 parameter going in. So that 1 parameter we're passing in is the array rating. So that's my parameter, and because it's a function, it's going to return a value. So I'm putting that value in the variable my highest. And that's my answer. So calling the function, putting it in there, and I'm passing in the right parameter.